The late President Magufuli of Tanzania said that economic war is the hardest of all wars. He said it's harder than a war of guns. And I think we are seeing that almost everywhere.
It takes a different software. That's the problem. For military war, we go to a camp, we roll on the floor, we do push-ups, we do shoot up stuff. This is how you get grenade, how to break guns. You train 6 months, 1 year. Then you pick up a gun in your sleep. Now talk about the economic war. Why would Magufuli say that? Because you are moving a soldier who was trained to shoot, to blast, to detonate grenades, and you put him on a balance sheet. This is the reality of African politicians who walk from the bush with whatever kind of education they received. This one story. Then you move this entire system into they come as political people into the economic boardrooms. So there's frustration as to why I think it's not changing. Because the very understanding of how the system is wired, they never went on the shooting range to train as economic soldiers. Where if you are going to be doing a revolution on the economic table,
I think we can proceed. I think it's recording.
The revolution on the economic table needed the same discipline and training that we did for political liberation. And maybe let's give you the full war. After we have fought the political war and won, then we discover we have an economic war which must be fought, we must win. Then we'll discover there's an academic war of education that we must fight and win. Then we discover there's an agricultural war we must fight and win. Then sports and entertainment, we must first fight and win. And lastly, spirituality. So I've actually designed for you, your generation, the 7 major pillars that the modern young people, you need to understand this battle. Or else, your fathers stood up after political war. Oh, now we need economic war. We don't need to go that route. Let's activate all the 7 of them and let's implement.
So with the coups that we have seen, I think that's the first stage. Then comes in the next stage of, running the country and creating, fighting the economic war. Are the current revolutionary leaders in West Africa prepared to be able to do that?
You can never be prepared for a revolution, unfortunately. The disadvantage we have is that the educated young people are drowning in the Mediterranean. These military leaders who are coming into space, the young people, the technocrats that they need, who can implement the project, they're either too old or they're on the Mediterranean. So now you have the political environment that is conducive. The question is, do you have the academic, the economic, the agriculturalist, and the industrialists who can now fit into those vacuums? Because the danger is, you take over. You chase away the French, you chase away the British, who were manufacturing your sugar and your bread and your peanut butter. Because you abandoned your old ways of life as Africans. So bread will go on scarcity on the market. Salt will go on scarcity on the market. Because the people who have been supplying these things is not you.
Yeah.
But the same people that you're chasing away. So you're going to end up with a hunger strike. And once people get into the rampage of hunger, you are back again. This leader is not good. Let's change him. Let's put another one. And this has been the vicious cycle. So the real war is entrepreneurship, putting means of production in the hands of young people, creating conducive environments for young people to function, and grow the economy from the bottom. You as government put preferential procurement policies that encourage indigenous people. It takes longer, but it is sustainable. And it is fully owned by local people. Because right now, even if we talk about uranium, let uranium stop. Uranium stops. Are your universities right now equipped to build a laboratory a station for uranium? Is your government prepared to do that? Where do you get the machinery? Where do you get this? So instead of just stopping the uranium, which is giving you the money for now, you may want to sell it at a competitive price, but commit that of every dollar that of per watt goes into the full beneficiation of that resource that you have. So whether it is Zambia for their copper, it is Zimbabwe for their lithium, it is Niger for their uranium. The question is, are you just selling these raw materials? And if you stop selling them, how are you going to have the money that you were having to run the government? But if you should be selling it, what are you doing in the proceeds of that? You're using the money for the proceeds to spend on other things instead of investing on the resource that can actually grow itself. We need to run governments like businesses. Then we'll stop being borrowers and putting our hands in the air. Because the policies that we have put in place to allow resources to go out of the country are the very solution to the needs of the masses at the bottom. You are busy selling raw materials. These are crying for jobs. And you as a leader, you can't think to say the raw materials that I'm selling, if I put them here, I could create a factory that creates the jobs. So it sounds like the economic war needs a totally different type of a gun. We need people who understand not only European economics, Western economics, Chinese economics, but also African economics. Because the pyramids were built in Sudan and in Egypt. We don't know what economics they were using. Benin was built with all the complications of that city. We don't even have the architectural plan and what economics they used. The Great Zimbabwe. So the question of barter, so when I give you something, you give me something. So if I give you my gold, I can't be buying food from you because you've asked me to plant flowers in my house so that I can sell you the flowers. And with the money for gold, then I must buy food to come and eat at home. That's why I say always plant what you eat and eat what you plant. Because you might think as a country that you're in business. Meanwhile, you are running around the same circle. You're busy shipping out coffee. Who eats coffee for breakfast and lunch? And with the money that comes for coffee, now you must buy food. So why not just remove this coffee and plow food that you can eat? This is the mindset that we have. No, the GDP, this affects the GDP. But where's the GDP in my stomach? So if people that are feeding forests, feeding flowers, feeding coffee, and things that are inedible, because they are of high demand in the West, they will bring forex. Who owns that forex? Who is producing? Who is banking that money? Whose land is it? Are those people eating? Consolidate your thinking as an African nation.
It's mind-blowing. And it's like, Africa was the least of the continent you're supposed to be having these conversations. Conversations of borrowing money, conversations of, fighting the economic war. It's like we have everything to our advantage, and yet it seems like most leaders are losing the war. I mean, have they even chosen to fight the war, though? That's the question.
They chose to fight the war, but their mindset was not to liberate everybody. It was to liberate themselves. I am going to use a very weird illustration. So you sit up straight. In a psychological ward where diagnosis can be made over the effects of abuse, various forms of manifestations happen over and above the physical, if it was a physical abuse. There is also so there's a physical abuse itself. There's also emotional abuse. There could also be mental abuse, which can manifest itself in many ways, where you can either become too abusive also to others, or you can become suicidal, or you can have an altered personality. So when you look at our political leaders, there's a psychology that needs to be set down and discussed. These people fought. These people were at war. These people buried their brothers and sisters. These people went through trauma of the highest orders. And no one bothers to check their mental condition after abuse and how to deal with trauma. So there is individual trauma, which I can face as a person. There is family trauma, when something happens in the family that shakes everybody. There's community trauma, and there's national trauma. Now we're dealing with continental trauma, a reverberation of trauma. So maybe we need a bit of psychologists here who can say, what are the processes when you are dealing with a traumatized person? A traumatized person by hunger will buy 16 houses, 25 cars, 45 pens and shoes and what things that he never afforded. Why? Because now he's got there. So a person who is coming from the trauma of poverty, when they have things, they lose everything because they're trying to compensate on what they never had. So now you have 10 cars. So how many can you drive at a time? Can you drive one? Then you find some of these presidents, you grab a house there, you grab a house there, you grab a house there, you get a car there. How much money do you have now? No, I'm sitting on 2 billion. 2 billion? You won't even finish eating it. With 3, 4, 5 plates of food a day. You can afford any hospital you want in the world. You can stay in any house you want in the world. But no, 2 is not enough. How much now? I'm on 8. How much now? I'm on 15. And you go. And then after that, we hereby announce the said passing away of.
Gone.
Then what was life all about? What was that drama all about? Only to end up right here. So maybe also issues of satisfaction when it comes to trauma, when you have gone past those levels of accumulation, and then one morning you wake up and go, ah man, how can I be ordering snow from Europe to celebrate Christmas? How can I be taking 25 million and giving it to France to repair a church? How can I send and hire an aeroplane to go and shop for caviar in Italy and olives in France and then come back home for dinner? How can I do that? So the humanness of our presidents, some of them, I fully understand them, that they are not normal. They are actually traumatized psychologically, to an extent that some may even need medical attention. I'm not joking. We may end up with 1 or 2 of them in psychiatric wards because of them. Because if you should right now sit down with them and ask them to relate what happened to them, what were the wars like, you may discover that they've not gone through it. Some are on drinking, some are on drugs, some are on heavy suppression tablets, high blood pressures, and etc., dealing with the trauma. And while they're dealing with their trauma, they're running a country. So you have patients in some certain places. Some of them are repenting, some of them are growing up, some of them are coming to some of them have dealt with it. So it's a rehabilitation. Government, for me, is a rehabilitation center for military juntas. I never thought I would gather confidence to say that.
It's like, what a way to think about it. Who thinks about it that way?
Maybe it's a mindset. It's a mindset that you look at things. I say I'm a watcher. Maybe I've never understood what that means. I stop very often and I look and I look and I observe and I observe and I process 1,000 tons of information in my head and I process and I think through them and I begin to hear the voices of reason and common sense, which many people could actually be undermining, but the answers are not far. They're actually in plain sight. There's nothing new that I'm saying that you don't know. That maybe it was not just activated to know. We debrief soldiers so that they can become civilians. Because if you don't debrief them, they will remain in their military. And once they're in a military space, then civilians are something else, they are something else. Yeah. So you can't teach me how to shoot people and kill people, then give me a checkbook and tell me how to manage the Department of Finance. Sometimes our governments fail because we've just put the wrong people in the right places.
Sometimes our government fails because we have put the wrong people in the right places. I don't think when people ask you why you don't run for the office or if you have thought of one day being the president, I don't think you're surprised when they ask you that question, given the area that you are in. But I watched your interview with DJ Sbu, and one of the things you said was that you don't think you're going to run for the office. I also had a conversation with the great PLO Lumumba from Kenya, and he said the same thing. He said he believes that you don't need to be in office to be able to create change. And here we are talking about leaders who are in office, and some of them are really sick. If you were to be a leader, how do you think you would have been able to avoid that? Which could also shed light on how young people can also avoid such challenges if they are to take offices.
In my case, it is important to gather to myself like-minded people. Running for political office right now, with the quality of politics that we have and the quality of people that we have, it's in some cases a waste of time, because you place yourself in an environment where you are incapacitated to implement the changes that you want. Because this is a revolution, it's not a negotiating table. If I would become a president, I would disrupt everything overnight. And the societies are not ready to be disrupted overnight. You create a civil war.
Chaos.
So would rather start off at the back in terms of information, training, and developing, and starting now to creating parallel structures. That's why I support indigenous business people. Whether you're making shoes, we are doing a garden, or you've started a bank, and I'll support you. Because we want at a time when we get into political spaces to actually be able to make a decision. Says, now from today onwards, no more money is going to that bank, that European bank. We're depositing our money in this African bank here. We're not going to be doing this, but we need those vehicles available and ready. Otherwise, we're going to get ourselves into political power and get stuck with the same laws, which we can influence now from outside to create the conducive environment. So I think getting into a political space right now is a disadvantage, because then it inhibits you from influencing the same system that you want to change. So even if the government does not want to move faster, we're encouraging the young people to say, get started, do something. Another 5-10 years from now, all old people go where other old people go. And when they go, other people will be in their spaces also. So we don't have to fight for politics and power. If what we want is to change our societies, I think education and the information distribution is one of the most powerful tools we have right now to begin the intellectual revolution towards the preservation of Africa and championing a new future.
And I don't think access to education is the problem, though. Because, I mean, with internet right now, you can learn anything you want to learn, right? I usually say if someone walks up to me and they go like, hey, I want to learn, let's say, video editing. Can you teach me? I'm like, you're not serious about learning. Because if you are, you can literally teach yourself about it, right? Like you can find the resources that you need. And so the question is, but I think we can now say that young people are really thirsty of change. And we can see this through the revolutions happening in West Africa and their support for the revolution.
The problem we can count on education and pinpoint on education is that in as much as there is so much available education, but why is there so little invention? So it looks like the education is not tapping into the right juices that can actually give us a political revolution. I wish the internet was teaching people how to activate uranium, how to make batteries out of lithium, how to make copper wires. What are the systems that are put in there? So you have what you might call education, but these are just adverts. The real education we need is the science of technology and the IP information. Can you imagine the whole world is drinking Coca-Cola and they still don't know how to make Coca-Cola? So here you are on internet and say, we're learning lots of things. You're learning where is McDonald's, not what is inside the Coca-Cola bottle. We're learning how to edit a video. You're not learning how to make a video, how to make yourself a machine that takes these cameras. So the information you're talking about, young men, yes, they've flooded it with the useless information. They have not exposed the IP information. And the real money is not on retail. The real money is on manufacturing. So maybe if it makes sense to you,
Wow. No, it does. It does. And I think we can agree that those who run businesses are the ones who have true power.
That is a fact. In fact, business is the real politics. The rest is a playfield of poor people. Rich people don't vote for nothing. Their money votes for them. Their money decides for them.
But then again, our governments don't create policies that enable people to become entrepreneurs.
I think we've gone past that
Yeah.
because creating entrepreneurs eats into the established businesses. So you'll find mainstream shops are not happy with the people that are selling clothes on the street. Why? Because people are no longer coming to their shops to buy. But who is paying tax? They are paying tax. They are not paying tax. So you begin to have war. And some of these civil wars we find, they're actually local businesses that are instigating the government to silence the smaller businesses so that they can have monopoly. Like in South Africa, we saw that happening. The big shops were compromised when they actually found themselves sponsoring wars with the Somalis and the Ethiopians. And they said it was xenophobia. South Africans are killing Nigerians, are killing Zimbabweans. But when you look further into the pot, you find that there's a foreign hand that is manipulating this thing to get this business removed here so that their businesses can remain where they are because these people are all over their faces. So Africans, again, if we're not careful, will be used for killing each other. While we are shooting and killing each other and we are standing at a graveyard, the white man is at the bank signing the spoils of war.
If you are to give us an action step of how to proceed to win the economic war, how would that look like?
It will be as simple as one government takes one budget. One government takes one budget. Just leave a few little money in critical services like health and education. The full government budget. You just walk up to China and buy factories. Put one in Njinja, put one in Kasese, put one in Munyoro, put one huge industries, whether for manufacturing bamboo, toothpicks. Can you imagine with all our engineers, Africa,
And
cannot
all the
even produce
trees.
a toothpick. A whole engineer with 14 years qualifications can make a toothpick. So we need a government intentional intervention, which is backed up, picking up all the professors, all the professional people that are there, package them first. How much capacity do we have in this industry? How much capacity do we have in this industry? Both in terms of skills development and young people coming as an apprenticeship. You have the instrument as government. All that information is in your hands. Okay, we have so many in water, we have so many in etc. This for water, let's see what we can do with the Victoria. So you simply re-establish the function of activating your economy from the grassroots. So stop, take the military budget, take the national budget, get to China, buy factories of processing pineapples into juice at world market level. You're no longer just producing pineapple juice for 2, 3, 4 shops down the road. Buy factories for making, what you call these nice bananas, plantain, and etc., and packaging them for the world.
Big businesses.
Big businesses. And with this big business, imagine the amount of employment that comes in immediately. Imagine how this turns into banking. Imagine how this turns into school fees. Imagine how this turns into buying cars, how much it turns into buying houses, and etc. So the cascading of activating the economy where it matters the most is a whole solution. You're sitting here with millions of tons of water, which you don't even know what to do with as Uganda. That water is just flowing to the sea. And it's right here. It's a nuisance, actually. People wish they could cover it and close some of it to put houses. And here's the resource. Of all our engineers in the government and beyond, no one has ever sat down to say, how can we convert Nelubale's water resource into a world-class business? Not only for tourism, but into world-class business. Not only for fisheries, but a world-class business. And all our schools, we go there to study. Everything else except what we have. So you go to start about William Shakespeare. You don't know how much water is in Nelubale and how deep is it and what are the other uses of water that we can have and how can you as young people who are sitting next to this resource make sure that you benefit from this resource. Your education never told you that. So we send our children to Caesar and we're surprised why they've come back as Romans.
I think we go back to what Fanon was saying. Because when you think of all these things, they really don't make sense. It's like we are either really sick people walking around, or everyone has just given up, really. Right?
The interesting thing, actually, when you talk like I talk, then the woke ones say, he's mad. It's me now who is crazy. You know that? It's very interesting, isn't it? You tell people this thing is like this, then they look at you and they go, no.
Yeah, that is
You are too highly opinionated. You are mad. And you sit back and you look and you feel sorry for them. But in the fullness of time, I think when we were young, we believed everything. When we got a little bit older, we started questioning everything. Now we are mature. We even question the question. These are levels of inquiry. So when we were young, we would be excited just to hear of something happening and we get excited. But when you got older, wanted to know. We were young, we'd be happy we're eating sweets. Sweets are nice. But when you're older and you see your child eating sweets, you are worried. Who gave you the sweets? It's no longer just about you are eating the sweets. No. Who gave you the sweets? Throw them away. You don't eat sweets. But when you get mature, you now ask the intentions of the one who was giving the sweets. Why did you give my child the sweets? I hope you can unpack that when you are by yourself.